Well, this week we're bringing you a special series on budget, focusing on the big issues. It's just over a week to go until Budget Day on the 22nd of February, and economic players are trying to predict what Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan will do. Now, there is a general consensus that taxes will be going up. Gordhan needs to find an estimated 30 billion rand or thereabouts. That's the gap between the money that will come in and the money that government will need to spend. That's without any major adjustments to our spending plans. Already, the rating agencies are concerned that government has been borrowing in recent years, and the debt burden has become more serious because our economy is just hardly growing. Well, tonight we're looking at a potential new sin tax, a tax on sugar. Last year, Gordhan announced plans to introduce a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages from April this year to reduce levels of obesity and diabetes. The proposed tax of 2.29 cents per gram could lead to sugary carbonated drinks, say a can of Coke, costing about 20% more. Several countries have made similar moves, but critics have warned about job losses and say singling out one category of sugary product could be discriminatory. Well, let's discuss. We're now joined by Lullu Krugel from KPMG, who's looked at the sugar tax. My gut feel is I like this because I look at people drinking Coke and I'm just like, why? We know it's so packed with sugar. But I understand what you're saying, that this tool is a little bit blunt for what government is trying to do.
Well, I mean, taxes can work, but and there are some trends to show that it has worked in some countries. But you always have to weigh up the potential benefits and the costs with each other, with every policy initiative that you consider. And the problem with taxes is it normally doesn't work for the people that it's intended to work for. Even if you look at something like taxes on alcoholic beverages and so on, a lot of people might make the decision to continue buying them. And then on the flip side, we're saying that you know, it is a regressive form of taxation, so it could potentially, and it will hit your poorer customers significantly harder. And the cost of alternatives under these circumstances are also, you know, sky high. If you look at 100% fruit juices, which by the way is also in the potential firing line, and water and so on, you know, those products are quite significantly more expensive. So where we've seen this work is if it was concurrent with potential subsidization of cheaper options and or healthier options, sorry, and then you know, introducing a tax. And the South African tax is also double than in terms of its rate than what we've seen in any other country.
Okay, so what you're saying is a lot of drinks are loaded with sugar. Isn't there an opportunity here? Companies will say, no, let's come up with something less sugar, cheaper, market that to consumers. Couldn't this lead to good things, unintended as well?
Yeah, so I think what a lot of the companies are saying is they've been trying to work with government for quite some time. A lot of them have committed to change their advertising strategies, to reduce the sugar content over time. So what they're saying is, give us some time. We are actually doing that, and don't just focus on us. Look at the entire value chain and all the kinds of sugar products that we consume as South Africans, because they're of the opinion that surely it's not only sugar-sweetened beverages that contribute to the problems that we have. So I think they feel a little bit, you know, focused on a little bit too much and targeted. And to be very honest, I feel like they potentially feel like they need to pay for the sins of you know, everybody out there.
What are the alternatives? Because you spoke about the research, but I think there is some research pointing to sugar-sweetened drinks. KPMG spoke about Cornell University saying there was no link, but there are a lot of countries looking at this and saying there is a link. So what are the alternatives?
So ironically, the countries that have introduced this has had mixed success. Or in the case of Mexico, there's early results to show that they might, you know, the impact of it is maybe less than they anticipated. So what we're saying is, A, it should be part of a broader suite of interventions, and I think there I must say that the Department of Health is on the right track by saying this is not the only thing that we want to focus on, but I think a lot of players are feeling that, you know, you are focusing so much on the taxes and we're not hearing enough about the other things that we've, by the way, have been working with you. It's about changing people's behavior and changing their buying patterns and so on over time. Certain things that have been recommended in other countries is changes in labeling, the packaging sizes, and as I said, also incentivizing healthier options and education. So what the department is saying, we're doing all of that in conjunction, but I think, you know, a lot of market players are feeling that they're storming in with this, and we've just started to work on those other things.
Is that because perhaps it's a cheaper option? I mean, you're talking about labeling. I think we have focused on that. A colleague of yours talking about portion sizes, things like that. But that means regulation of the whole retail industry. It's not an easy thing to do.
So I think what the companies are saying is we've started to introduce some of that ourselves. So give us a little bit of a chance. And make no mistake, it is an easy form of getting additional taxation, although government you know, is very firm to say that they don't know what they're going to get from this. If you do make the calculations, it should be in the region of anywhere between 6 to 13 billion rand. So it fills up quite a bit of that gap that currently exists.
That's significant.
And that creates a bit of cynicism with a lot of market commentators, unfortunately.
Okay, but it will be good for our tax position.
It could be, but then if it's good for taxes, it means it's not working on the health side, because then it means people are still spending, you know, on the beverages that they shouldn't be.
And you've also looked at the flip side, the possible job losses, and gave quite a big figure there. How do you get to that? What's your figure?
So that is quite a controversial number, and there's ranges that we've put out that's anywhere from 400,000 or 500,000 jobs. To some of the industry players, it's saying up to 700,000. And it's, if you need to understand the entire value chain from the farmer to the bottler to the manufacturer to the small little shop at the end of the value chain that sells this. And the counter argument is, well, if you bring in other products, then potentially it could offset, you know, the losses, the potential losses in revenue. But there's not enough evidence there. And as I said, unfortunately, we've seen in other countries that that doesn't necessarily happen. So ideally, one wants a situation where you have a very good picture of what are all the pros, what are all the cons, and weighing that up. And if they want to go the route of the tax, then we're saying maybe not 20% then, maybe think about 5, 6, that's what we've seen in other countries, seem to have worked, and that could actually fill the cost gap of what these, if that is what government intends to do, because they're saying it's a negative externality of what these diseases like diabetes and so on is costing the South African economy.
And I think you've suggested a progressive tax depending on if it's fruit juice or carbonated drinks. What are these other countries doing? Because there's a lot of them. Denmark, Finland, France, Hungary, Ireland, Mexico, Norway. Are they focusing on sugary drinks, or is that much more nuanced what they're doing?
So Denmark, for example, started out with a tax on all kinds of products that have some kind of additional sugar content added to it. And eventually they decided to scrap it because it didn't work very well. People went and bought products in other countries because it's Europe, it's easy to get there. It just didn't have the desired impact. They decided to stop it. In Mexico, they're saying it's early days, we don't know. California is a state in the US that decided to actually implement this, and they have similar problems where people are shopping across border, where they're hoarding products. Okay, you can only hoard so much Coke for so long, and then you'll run out of space.
House full of Coke.
Yes, but those are some of the challenges that needs to be looked at. And I think, you know, companies in the beverage industry is just saying, listen, maybe just, and we're not representing any of them, but maybe just look at a broader range of products. If you really want to go this route, just give us a chance to implement the stuff that we are doing. And as economists, we are saying, weigh up the costs and the benefits and make sure that you understand that. But because the 20% on the face of it, for me, looks a little bit on the high side.
Right, without the backing of the research.
Yes.
So you're not gung-ho on this, but is it going to happen?
It is very likely. I think there's been a lot of conversations that has taken place. There's been interactions with the National Treasury during the course of last year. There was further interactions now early in or towards the end of January to get inputs from industry players. Treasury's view is at the end of the day, the final decision rests with the minister. And whilst I've sometimes laughed when people say that, it is truly up to him to, at the end of the day, decide whether or not that he wants to include it. And he will consider this with a whole range of other tax options that's on the table. Should he increase VAT? Should he increase personal income tax? And this would probably form part of that basket. I somehow don't think if they do go for it, they are going to go for it for the 20%, although the health researchers are saying that's what we need to make a difference in South Africa. But from a just purely fiscal point of view and economic point of view, I'm not sure that they will go with that.
All right, well, all will be revealed next week, Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Lullu Krugel from KPMG, and we will be there at that budget speech, and this week bringing you a whole lot of previews. So tomorrow we'll look at some of the other tax options that Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has.